We got a pretty cool topic tonight, Mike. I was excited when you brought this one up, and you said you wanted to talk about a couple examples. I didn't think there's really any examples of dragons.
Yeah, they're goddamn reptilians. They're proto-reptilians.
Fire-breathing proto-reptilians?
See, it's not fire. It's magical weapons that looks like fire because humans are fucking dumb.
So the dragon is shooting out magical weapons from its mouth, or?
No, it's like he's got this cool mask because they're reptilians, but they gotta look like dragons. Or it's a reptilian spaceship that's designed to look like a dragon, like the Shatari sky whale things.
Yeah.
Avengers, like that sort of thing, except it blasts fire, or in some cases poison.
How cool would that be if they just unearthed this giant robotic skeletal structure that resembles
and
a dragon?
as soon as they unearth it, it comes to life and just starts destroying everything.
That would be awesome.
That's my hope for the future. Like we get breaking news. They've discovered this crazy thing buried beneath the pyramids of Giza, and we don't know what they are. And as the news is filming, and all of a sudden you see this huge dust cloud and hear screams, "Oh my God!" And this huge dragon monster robot thing just rears up out of the ground, toppling over ancient buildings and just destroying everyone in its wake, blasting down with this fucking heat ray out of its mouth.
That's almost the opening to Reign of Fire.
Is it? I've never seen that movie.
Yeah, it's like a what? You gotta watch that one. That one's awesome.
Are they robot dragons?
No. They're real dragons, but it makes its first appearance similarly to that.
Oh, nice.
So it looks like the only robotic dragons we get are from Power Rangers.
And Godzilla.
That's right.
Yeah, King Ghidorah, when he got destroyed, and then the aliens from the future talked to the people in the present and told them that they had to rebuild him with robot stuff. And there's also the Mecha Godzilla, which an argument could be made that that's a dragon.
I'd say so.
Breathes fire.
Yeah, it's a reptile-like creature that breathes out some type of damaging.
Yeah, it doesn't fly, but
no, he does that flying sidekick. That's dope. I say that's flying for something that big.
The flying drop kick. I love it. What propels him forward? Will we ever know?
No. It's the secret of...
It's Godzilla magic. That's what it is. But the dragon has been a big part in mythology for a long time. And in different parts of the world, it has a different sort of... it's looked at in a different way. But the dragons and I guess dragon-like monsters that we're going to be focusing on are the European dragons, the classic like Smaug and Game of Thrones dragons, that style, not the Eastern dragons with the long bodies and the short legs and the lack of wings and all that. We're talking evil monster dragons that want to eat people and steal gold and all that wacky shit.
Yeah.
But stories like that go back a very long time, and I think, I could be wrong here, but I think one of the first ones to really tell this story was Beowulf. And Beowulf was a really badass warrior who saved the village from Grendel, this big monster that was unkillable, and he was able to kill it. And then later, he had to fight his pissed off mom, who was also a super badass monster that he had to kill. So he was like the kind of proto-hero. But I guess I should amend that and say that it was one of the first European versions of that story. Because if you go back even further, with Babylonian myths, there's the story of Tiamat, and she was waging war against the gods. She was this huge dragon, and she produced these 13 monster children, and each one was kind of seen as like a specific super powerful demon. And none of the gods could defeat her and her children until Marduk finally came in, and he was able to kill Tiamat and her children, as well as her lover. And with Tiamat, he cut her in half, and half of her body was the earth and the other half was the sky. And then he used the blood of her lover to create life on earth. So in all life on earth exists this monster blood deep down. We're all spawned from monster blood.
Yeah, I like it.
Yeah. So that's a really early, I mean, that's the first civilization that had this legend, but I'm sure there were stories of monsters going back through oral history that we're completely unaware of because they only existed orally.
Now, I have a question for you about that. As far as going that far back with descriptions of dragons, does it seem like every culture from time immemorial has some type of dragon? Or do you think that's getting lost in translation a little bit? Do you think they're all trying to say the same thing, this giant winged, fire-breathing, reptile-like creature?
Well, you gotta think, in the ancient past, the serpent was considered an immortal being, and it was also often looked at in mythology and legends as something that would be able to pass wisdom onto the people. And because it was seen as being immortal and possessing this knowledge, I think that it was also able to be looked at as being something monstrous because it possessed all this knowledge. It had this intelligence, but it could never die. And if it can't die, then it's powerful. You know, it's got more power than your average mortal.
Mm-hmm.
So with that belief, it's easy to kind of move that to a monster. A lot of these old stories involving monsters and demons, they kind of evolved from their origins to when Christianity really took over, especially during the times when Christianity was trying to convert pagan beliefs, where they were dealing with these other beings, like the horned god, for instance. When we think of the devil, the classical depiction of the devil, it's a being with goat legs and horns. And this was a god that was worshipped all over Europe. It can be, depictions of it can be seen as the god Pan in Greek mythology, and he was seen with goat legs, and he had goat horns, but then a human upper body. And then there was even a creature in Greek mythology called the satyr that was said to look like Pan. Then there's Cernunnos, who was the Celtic god of nature and fertility, and he's depicted with deer antlers, but in a lot of depictions he has goat legs. Sometimes he has ram horns, and he's often seen holding a serpent in one hand that has horns on its head.
Really?
So yeah, he's holding the horned serpent. And so to a lot of Christianity that, or I should say a lot of Christians that are seeing these chimeric gods, these gods that represent animals, but also humans, and they all have their own place. And you can even see it like in Egyptian mythology as well. A lot of the gods were depicted as being part human, part animal.
Mm-hmm.
But when you see these things from a Christian standpoint, where you're dealing with God and then his angels and then the devil and his demons. So when you see these monstrosities, and even though some of them, like I talked about in the recent episode on Pazuzu, Pazuzu was a demon of the southwest wind and the demon of disease, but he was used as protection for pregnant women. So he was seen as being a demon, but also a protector. So when Christians are seeing these things, they're not looking at the good side of it. They're just seeing these monsters. These things are scary looking. And as a result, they started to demonize all these figures. And no longer were these gods that were being revered and worshipped. They were now demons to be feared.
That's interesting to think about after talking about the Pachuchu stuff. Maybe they're all
Pachuchu.
Maybe they've all just been demonized by early Christianity. Maybe they don't look like a weird dog thing standing up, holding up his hand.
No. Pazuzu was that's how Pazuzu looked.
Well, I mean,
that was an accurate depiction of it.
Maybe there were other demons that were supposed to just look like regular people or something like that. Maybe they were just thrown on that twist. In the people who worship Pazuzu, there was two ways to do it. I mean, just like in the Greek pantheon, you can piss off a good and kind god, and he can do terrible shit. Maybe it was more like that instead of just some, lava humping demon.
Yeah, and with Pazuzu specifically, he was the god of disease, but as we all know, disease is part of the natural world.
Mm-hmm.
So it was like if you didn't take the proper precautions or you didn't do something you were supposed to do, then the winds would blow in the disease and you'd be punished as a result. But if you did the right things, you'd be protected.
And then he wouldn't be like a horrible demon at all to you, right?
Right. Yeah. And that's pregnant women had like necklaces with a small version of that statue on it. Or they would have idols that they would hold while they were giving birth to ask for his protection while they were giving birth so that his wife wouldn't kill their babies. Because I believe I mentioned this, but like infant death syndrome or stillborn babies were all seen as being killed off by Pazuzu's jealous wife.
Okay, so maybe dragons are just another depiction of a demon-like creature, and that's where they're getting the idea of a dragon. I just wonder if that's...
I think in some cases that's the deal there. I think in others it's just kind of an archetype. Like let's take the story of Saint George and the Dragon, for instance. So that's probably the most famous legend. I can't think of any that would be more famous than that. But the story goes that Saint George, well, he was traveling the countryside. The figure of Saint George was kind of a legend among crusaders. They would often say that Saint George and other warrior saints were with them in battle during the Crusades. But anyway, Saint George, the legend of Saint George kind of really started to take hold in the 11th century. And the legend that came out was that Saint George was either going or returning from one of the Crusades, and he was riding through Libya, and there was a place called Selene, and Selene was being terrorized by this dragon that was able to spit venom from its mouth, and it was poisoning everything across the countryside, and it lived in this pond that was near Selene. So in order to protect their city from the dragon, they started offering the dragon 2 sheep every day. But the dragon became dissatisfied with the 2 sheep. So he started threatening to poison the city unless they offered him more. So then they started offering up 1 man and a sheep to this dragon. And the dragon would eat them, and then he started demanding more. So it ended up coming down to they started offering up children and teenagers, and the way that they would decide whose children would be sacrificed to the dragon is they would hold a lottery, and the winner of the lottery would go and get eaten by this dragon.
Oh God! So they would try to win the opportunity to get eaten, not avoid being eaten.
Well, I say winning, and I mean that very loosely. It was it was a lottery system, but whoever's number got drawn was the next one to be eaten by this dragon.
Okay.
So as it happens, because this is a legendary story after all, so everything needs to fall in place perfectly. At the time when St. George was rolling through town, the king's daughter won the lottery. So she was all dolled up. The king actually went down to the dragon and begged for his daughter's life. The dragon obviously didn't give a shit, because the dragon's like, I don't care if it's a king, peasant, whatever.
I need
my youthful children. So then the king started offering all of his money to the people of the village to spare his daughter. But they were like, fuck you, king. Our sons and daughters had been sacrificed too. No one was willing to pay us to skip them, so fuck you. Your daughter can get eaten by the goddamn dragon. So what's the king going to do? The people didn't want to do it. The people didn't want to take his money and give up their own kids. So his daughter got all dressed up. She was dressed in a fine wedding gown and taken out to the pond to be eaten by the dragon. Just by chance, St. George was coming through on his horse as the daughter was being taken up to the pond. And as he comes up, the princess tries to get him to go away. And he's like, nah, I'm going to hang out and see what's going on. So as he's sitting there talking with the princess, the dragon comes up out of the pond. And St. George was like, oh, fuck, goddamn dragon coming out of the pond. Does the sign of the cross. St. George is a man after your own heart, Mateo. So the dragon comes up. The dragon doesn't say anything. The dragon just comes up out of the pond. He does the sign of the cross, and he charges the fucker on horseback and stabs it with his lance.
Yes.
No questions. He's just like, oh, fuck, dragon. And he stabs the fucker. Didn't kill him, though. He just wounded it. So then he calls over to the princess. He's like, hey, princess, throw me your girdle, which is kind of rude. I mean, she's royalty, for Christ's sake. And you're just like, hey, throw me your girdle. Like she's some hussy.
He's all, if I'm going to die, I need to see something.
Yeah. Show me something. She's like, here's my girdle. So he grabs the girdle. In my mind, she throws it and it's slow motion and he's riding on his magnificent horse. End over end, the girdle's flying. He reaches up just at the right moment, grabs it, hops down off his horse, jumps onto the dragon's back, and just starts choking the shit out of it with this girdle. Now, in the myth, he actually does put the girdle around the dragon's neck. Doesn't say anything about him choking it and jumping on it or any of that shit. But that's what's going on in my head. So he puts the girdle around the dragon's neck, and as soon as he does, the dragon starts following the princess around and was acting like a tame dog on a leash.
Whoa.
So the princess and St. George bring this dragon into the city of Selene, and everyone starts freaking out. And St. George is like, hey, calm down, people. I've got the dragon right here in the midst of you. Now, I could kill it for you guys and free you of this. Or, since it's here, I could just let it go and he could eat you all and kill you. And they're like, oh my God, please kill the dragon. He's like, sure. I'll kill the dragon, but you need to all become Christians and get baptized. So, of course, with this village having a dragon in their midst, 15,000 men, including the king himself, converted to Christianity. Once this happened, King George chopped the dragon's head off, and the body was carried out of the village on 4 ox carts. Then the king ended up building a church in devotion to the Virgin Mary on the site where St. George lopped off the dragon's head. And it was said in legend that at the exact spot where the dragon died, a spring flowed out of the ground, and the water from the spring was able to cure all diseases.
Whoa, there's that dragon magic you were talking about.
Yeah, dragon magic. So this story is the most famous, but it was actually stolen from another saint.
Oh, the bastards. Why?
Yeah. So in the 8th century, it was attributed, a similar story was attributed to Saint Theodore, who had a run-in with a dragon and killed the dragon. And the famous iconography of Saint George on the horse with the dragon underneath him, that was originally the original depiction of Saint George, showed him with stabbing a person under his horse, and the person was supposed to represent a barbarian warrior. And that was from the 10th century that depiction occurred. And then in the 11th century, it started showing King George fighting the dragon. But there's even older iconography that shows similar things. There's one from the 4th century showing the Egyptian god Horus on horseback spearing the god Set, who is taking the shape of a crocodile. So Horus is riding on a horse, and he's stabbing down onto this crocodile that's under his horse. And then there was, from the same time period, the 4th or 5th century, there was a Roman depiction of basically the same thing, but this is showing a Roman cavalryman killing a barbarian, just like the original St. George depictions. Then there's an even older one showing a Greek soldier on a horse, but this time instead of having a dragon under them, there's a tree with a serpent wrapped around it. And that's from the 2nd century. So this is something that's kind of been, and like I said, going back to ancient Babylon with Marduk and his story of killing Tiamat. It's kind of a old story that just, if you're a hero, like look at Hercules, all of his stories, all the monsters, he even fought the fucking Hydra, which was a 9-headed dragon.
Yeah.
But again, the symbol of immortality is there because he cut off a Hydra's head, 2 more grow in its place.
Now, when you hear about these stories where dudes beat the tits off dragons, this guy jumped on its back with a girdle, put him in a chokehold with it. When you look up old engravings of dragons and stuff from medieval times, they're not huge giant things like depicted in Disney movies. They're Mokele Membe sized animals.
Yeah, they're typically like around horse size for the most part. Like most of the depictions show something that's roughly the size of the horse being stabbed.
Now, with that in mind, do you think they were actually fighting some type of extinct reptile? And if so, what's to be said about all the accounts of them spitting poison and fire and even sometimes ice?
No, I think that these are purely mythological
Tales.
Yeah, it's all legend, really. I don't think that this is some sort of cryptid. It is kind of weird that we see similarities, I guess. But again, I think a lot of it has to do with Christianity kind of demonizing old belief systems. So what started out as the serpent giving knowledge to man became Satan tempting Eve in the Garden of Eden and corrupting mankind's soul for eternity. And even in the book of Genesis, the serpent originally had legs. God takes away his legs and makes him crawl on his belly.
That's a little teeny tiny dragon.
Yeah. Well, I mean, who knows how big it was? It could have been a goddamn python.
Ooh. Imagine a python with legs.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. It's goddamn terrifying.
It wraps around you and then just starts heel kicking you in the ribs and stomach while it's choking you to death.
Yeah, just kicking your stomach in to make you try to take deeper breaths so that it can crush you faster.
Yeah, he would kick ass at jiu-jitsu.
Yeah. But there's another famous dude who he's not so much known for fighting monsters, but when you really get into his legends, there's a lot of shit about him fighting monsters. But that's Saint Patrick.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So the Saint Patrick character is kind of he's one we know that he existed, at least to a certain extent. There's a possibility that it may have been two separate people that kind of got combined into the Saint Patrick character. What we think based on historical accounts is that he was born in Rome, and he was taken basically by Irish pirates. He was taken as a slave to Ireland. It was when he was a teenager, and he basically wanted to convert all of Ireland to Christianity. And there's the famous story of him chasing the snakes out of Ireland. That's probably the most famous story associated with him. But the truth of the matter is that there have not been snakes in Ireland since the Ice Age. All records of snakes in Ireland date back before the Ice Age. So what I'm thinking is the story of him banishing the snakes. I think that was more a metaphor for the pagans, and instead of chasing the snakes out, he converted the pagans. But there's a lot more to his story. He was apparently a badass monster slayer, and he would walk around with this. It was this ashwood walking stick, basically. And he would walk around with it, and whenever he started telling the word of God, he would thrust it into the ground. And at one point, there's a legend. There's this place called Espatria, and it's supposed to be a place where St. Patrick went and planted his walking stick in the ground. And it was in the ground. So he was talking for so long that the walking stick ended up growing roots and grew into a tree. And there's now a church that was built in this place. And Espatria means the ash of Patrick, which was his ashwood walking stick. But anyway, he used this famous walking stick to beat up monsters regularly. He's a badass. So one monster was an evil hag named Garavog, and he used his walking stick to split her into multiple pieces and effectively killed her.
Whoa, like just bashed her?
Yeah.
Wow.
And broke her into a bunch of pieces.
Nice.
That's how savage of a monster killer he is.
Yeah, that took like 45 minutes or something.
Yeah. I will beat you until you fall apart.
Can somebody please get me a knife? No, use the stick. Okay.
There's another monster. This one's more dragon-like, but this one's called the Coronach, and it was submerged in the waters of Loch Derg, and he went to fight the monster, and when the monster came out, it actually swallowed him whole, and everyone thought he was dead. They're like, oh shit, he got eaten by the fucking sea monster. It was this big serpent monster. And he was able to apparently cut his way out of its belly. And he was able to cut his way out of its belly 2 days later and was like, hey, no, it's fine. Now, in Irish folklore, this monster is said to be the mother of all demons and devils.
Whoa.
Yeah. And the place where this mother of demons was killed is called Loch Derg, which means red lake. And it's said that it got its red color from the blood of this monster after in one case it was St. Patrick that killed it. In another tale it was the Irish hero Finn McCumhall. But so right there's a contradiction between who was the one that actually killed the monster. But it's legends, you know, they're never on point. But his St. Patrick's reputation as a kicker of monster ass was apparently so well known that even monsters, if they heard he was coming, would try to get away. And there's this one story of a monster called the Olafeist, that it's another dragon-like monster from Irish mythology. But the story goes that St. Patrick, after driving out all the snakes, was coming for the monsters. And he heard of this Olafeist, and he put the word out that he was coming for it. I'm coming, Olafeist. And when I get there, I'm going to kick your ass. So the Olafeist, terrified of badass St. Patrick, beats a hasty retreat. And he's so scared of St. Patrick that he literally cuts a river through Ireland, and it's the River Shannon. And he created the River Shannon trying to escape Ireland to get away from St. Patrick.
Wow.
Yeah. There's a kind of funny addendum to that story, though. In his escape, the monster swallows this drunken musician named O'Rourke, and he plays the pipes. And the musician was so drunk that he didn't realize that he got swallowed. So he continues to play his music while inside the Olafeist's stomach. And the monster just becomes so annoyed with O'Rourke's music that it pukes him up and leaves him behind. It's like, fuck you, I'm not even going to wait for you to digest. Can't stand your music, you suck.
Oh my God, so even an Irish monster can't stand Irish music?
Yeah. Let's get out of here with that shit.
Never mind.
He just coughs him up. And it's like, I'm going to get the fuck out of Dodge. St. Patty's coming. He's going to bring green beer with him. And that's the origin of St. Patrick's Day.
Nice.
Not really, but I wish St. Patrick's Day was more about fighting monsters. That'd be so awesome.
Yeah, for anybody who has a St. Patrick's Day party every year, now you can incorporate cryptids and monsters and cool shit into your party and be like, actually, St. Patrick also beat the shit out of monsters his entire life.
Yeah, basically, if you're celebrating St. Patrick's Day and you're with a big group, whoever is not of Irish ancestry needs to wear a monster costume. That's the new rule.
Oh.
And all the Irish, depending on how much of an asshole you are, the Irish get to beat you with sticks made of ash wood until you fall into multiple pieces.
Yeah, you have to make your monster costume to where it falls apart.
Yeah. Otherwise, they're going to beat you till your arms fall off.
And on that day, in the law, it is written that all homicides of people in monster costumes will go unpunished.
Are forgiven. Yeah. It's in honor of St. Patrick. I mean, they were pagan demon monsters, and we had to get rid of them. In the name of Jesus.
And St. Patrick's handled that shit.
Yeah. Yeah. You can bitch slap them with shamrocks and say, and talk about the Holy Trinity, which that's actually another one that's kind of legendary about St. Patrick, that he used the shamrock to demonstrate the Holy Trinity to the pagans, showing that there were three parts, but it was the same thing. Now, an interesting thing about that is that the pagan Irish during this time period had multiple deities that were 3 in 1. So 3 was a significant number already among the pagans. So it was a concept that they already would have been familiar with. And they never used the shamrock as like in a sacred manner. That was never viewed as being a holy item or anything. So it seems kind of more legendary, I guess, that he would use this as the symbol. And that story actually doesn't even appear in writing anywhere until the early 1700s. So, but because of that story, the shamrock is now the universal symbol for St. Patrick's Day.
And it should have been a cool ashwood stick
Yeah, it should have been. That should be the fucking symbol of St. Patrick's Day. A stick made of ash wood that you fight monsters with. Now, what better way to celebrate a badass monster killer than to get drunk and beat people with a stick?
Maybe they tried that for a few years
Beat
and too many people
non-Irish
died.
people with a stick. Yeah, probably. It just got to start being like a point of Irish pride, like how many non-Irish people you killed. This year I'm gonna top it.
Yeah, it started off as a costume party and turned into a free beer for every non-Irish ear you bring in.
Yeah, so maybe we should amend the practice that I outlined earlier, and just say instead of beating your non-Irish friends, just get piñatas that look like dragons and beat them with an Irish stick.
Yeah, or hags or whatever the last thing was that barked up musicians.
Hags. Oh no, that was another dragon thing.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So what dragons, sea serpent, hags, really any monster. Just fill a monster with stuff. You can fill it with green beer if you want. Just hit it with a stick and then everybody celebrate once it gets destroyed. Again, in the name of Jesus. But I think that a lot of that is tall tales in the way that we have like John Henry and shit like that. It's just a way to make a historical figure seem larger than life.
Go ahead, I'm sorry.
And I just think that, especially in the case of St. Patrick, that it's just being used as symbology for him converting the pagans in Ireland. They were considered godless heathens and monsters.
Do you think it's strange that in the same breath of telling stories of St. Patrick that they have one about him getting rid of pesky snakes and then another one about him being swallowed by a giant monster and breaking out 2 days later?
Well, that's kind of like the story of Jonah and the whale, where he got swallowed by the whale and the whale spit him out and he was fine.
Mm-hmm.
But I think it just shows that it was being used to show that he was being protected by God.
Ah, very good. Interesting.
Yeah.
Well, one thing I've always thought sucked was that there's not too many actual dragon cryptids like you talked about in the beginning. But what if I told you that I found one from a somewhat recent account?
I would call you a goddamn liar.
There is a cryptid called the Niger Fire Spitter. Dun, dun, dun.
Oh, shit.
This encounter comes from an email sent to a website that deals in the study of living dinosaurs. And they got this email back in 2002. And they report this on their website. The man said that while studying evolution, he came across the subject of living dinosaurs. He discovered that a lot of dinosaur sightings take place in and around Africa. His butler was from Niger, so he asked if he had heard of anything like these dinosaurs, and he mentioned like Mokele Membe, and he had also said that he had seen one in his home village. And the man said that he was shocked by this answer, so he drew the best he could, like the outline of a brontosaurus, and showed it to his butler. And the man said, yes, just like that, but a little bit different. And he grabbed the paper and drew like a giant fin or sail on its back. And that shocked the guy who was talking to him. He told a story about how back in 1984, in his village, there was a giant earthquake, and it left a giant crack in the ground. And the very next day, a creature was seen in and around the village and messing with people. So the village elders went and told the authorities, and the village elders with a group of soldiers went and tracked this thing down and killed it. And he described it, what we can say now, as a 3 to 4 foot tall Spinosaurus. And when the soldiers attacked it, he said it spit fire at them. And he said he was on this hunting party. And he said it was the color of sand with black and white spots. And after they killed it, they were able to examine it. And he had said it had the feet of an ostrich, which was interesting because of that Hellier documentary talks about that print found near that cave. And they reckoned that to be more reptile-like. than ostrich-like. So it's kind of like the same description to describe a giant reptile-like foot. But he said that the soldiers ended up filling the giant crack with rubble, so they didn't have to deal with anything like that. And he mentioned that even the village elders didn't know what that thing was. And reading about this cryptid, I read about it on just another site and doing a little research on it to see where it was, because I couldn't even find out this guy's story. You know, I just didn't want to say, like, he said he saw one. So I tried to find out what happened. And I had to dig around, and I wanted to know when this email was published, who got it. And it ended up being sent to, you know, one of my old classic go-tos when it comes to the weirder side of research, like shit like living dinosaurs. And I've used this website for years, and I trust what this website puts out. So it was interesting to do a little digging and find out it came from a website that I'm very, very familiar with and have used as a reference site for many years. But we got a report of a reptilian-type creature that actually was spitting fire in 1984. They said that by examining it, they said that its skin was soft, softer than what a giant, well, I don't know, a 4 foot tall reptile is kind of giant, I guess. They said it was soft and it seemed very young. And they said that if they were sure that if it got older, it would be huge.
Huh. So it's baby Godzilla.
I like the description of this baby Spinosaurus. I mean, that's one of the bigger 2-legged dinos that there is, you know, and to hear about this little 4-5 foot tall one running around spitting fire. It's like a Mario Brother character or something.
Yeah.
A pissed off Yoshi.
Yeah. After he eats one of the red turtle shells, he's like, no.
So this is clearly some report of a cryptid, but it's very much the description of a dragon. And I think,
but the thing with that is, though, like a lot of the cryptids in Africa, they get reported. I don't want to say often because that's not the case, but they're ones that have been seen a number of times, enough that there is a name for them, and people that have reported seeing them, and this just seems like one of those one-off things.
It really does. And they even say in the article that basically 99% of the information that this case provides comes from this one email. And the only thing that makes it have a leg to stand on to me is what website is reporting that they got the email.
Yeah, but just because they're reporting they got the email doesn't mean that anything in that email is legit.
Absolutely. They have and
that's the thing.
I totally agree. I'll send you the email so you can get your own tone of authenticity. I mean, the guy wasn't like asking for anything except for help possibly identifying something like that, or if they had heard of anything like that. It was as simple as the hell your fucking email, you know, just, hey,
yeah.
You know, just that simple. But I
do know that there was in Africa, there was a type of dinosaur creature that was seen with a frill on its back. I didn't see it
a more Stegosaurus type frill, right?
No, this was they called it like a sail.
Oh wow, okay.
Yeah, there's the Stegosaurus one too, but this one is said to have a sail on its back. But it lives in the water, right? Like it's amphibious. It comes out of the water, but it's primarily seen in the water, and just its sail is sticking out of the water like a shark fin.
They said pretty much the same thing about this little fire spitter. When they tracked it, it was to marshy, watery lands. It sounds like it was a full-grown one of these little spitters.
Maybe they can only spit when they're babies.
Yeah, they just lose it.
Yeah, well, they're small. They got to protect themselves. And then as they get bigger, they're like, now I can just fuck your world up by eating you. I don't need to waste energy on blowing hot gas out of my mouth.
Unless there's any dudes on horses with bras around here, then I'm out.
Yeah. If there is a random dude on a horse with a spear who has a girl nearby with a girdle, then I want nothing to do with it. Otherwise, I'm gonna fuck your world up. And then St. Patrick steps out of the shadow and starts twirling his stick around like Donatello with a bow staff. Cool music starts up, and he just clobbers him. Yeah.
Yep. I remember when I was a kid, I bought the soundtrack to that movie, and I spent every fucking penny I had. And both my parents are like shaking their head. They're like, dude, that's all your money. And I fucking still don't regret buying that fucking cassette tape.
I think I had that as a kid too, actually.
Dude,
I think I got it for Christmas or something.
it came with a fucking super dope Eastman and Laird sticker. And I had that for years. I think I ended up putting on a bass like 15 years later. That's another franchise that's been destroyed by cinema.
Well, based on your standards for reptile interaction, you'd murder every one of those turtles if you saw them.
No.
Just shoot them right in the fucking face. You're like, oh shit, it's a reptilian thing that's coming from underground. I will shoot it.
You know, the thing that would trigger the insta-kill reaction from me with the whole lizard wizard thing is the robe. If I saw a turtle that had like ancient Japanese weaponry on it, I'd be like, okay, he's pretty sentient, and maybe he's wise, maybe he's a warrior, maybe he's some
so if they have weapons, they're sentient, but if they're able to make textiles and wear them, then they're clearly fucking monsters, because what kind of monster wears clothes?
No, it's not the ability to make clothes. It's just what a dark robe would represent on a reptilian. I'd be like, he's not wearing trousers, or...
You do realize that reptiles are cold-blooded, right? It gets fucking cold. They need to have full body attire to keep their fucking heat in, Mateo. Otherwise, they get really slow and fucking lazy.
That he should have made a parka, not some weird satanic cult looking robe, because that's gonna get him shot in the face by a...
It's satanic to you, all right? Reptilians don't fucking believe in Satan. They don't give a shit. They don't, just because your perception is skewed, don't demonize the reptiles. Come on, Mike, this is ridiculous.
Well, he just better hope my trigger finger is slower than his magical wand powers, because he's gonna get shot in the face.
You're a goddamn monster. Your time will come, Mateo.
Right between the eyes. And as I shoot, I'm gonna shoot once and just put my gun down and start running towards it. So that before...
You're causing me a great deal of stress here, Mateo.
Before his body hits the floor, I'm gonna grab him by the scruff of his throat, rip his skin off, and instantly wrap it around my shoulders and scream into the air. I will make a robe out of him.
Wow.
Let it be known, lizard listeners. If you're a lizard, that's cool.
Fucking monster.
If you're a Ninja Turtle, it's cool. Just don't be a robe-wearing underground lizard wizard.
So let me get this straight. Just because they're turtles, they get a pass. But if they're lizards, what about frog people?
The Loveland Frog he's a little suspect because he's got a wand, and it bleeds into that wizardry stuff. No self-respecting wizard would be living in a cave. If he had magical abilities, he'd be able to turn some fortress invisible or something like that. A lizard
You ever hear of hermit wizards?
No. Well, yeah, in our world, lizard, you're right. Maybe they like to sleep in dark and cold, quiet places.
I don't think that's too much to ask. just a place where you can be safe. You got stone walls to protect you. You got your robe to keep you warm. And then you got some asshole with a gun who wants to shoot you in the fucking face just because he can't understand your language and your robe creeps him out because he's a big pussy. That's bullshit.
Dude, you know what I would have done? Even if it didn't notice me, it kind of would have walked out of the cave, stretched a little bit, wrapped his robe a little bit tighter, and it was looking around at the ground. I went, hey! And as soon as he looked up, bam! He wouldn't even know what happened. He just would have died with severe panic and questioning of surroundings.
And then you would have went acting like a goddamn hero. Meanwhile, his wife and kids are, why? Why did you kill Sky? Why did you kill him?
Yeah, you should have made a more peaceful sound and now use your fucking wizard magic to bring him back to life. You dirty bitch.
He was just introducing himself. It wasn't a hiss. That was his name. It was his goddamn name. And you shot him.
You know, I apologize. And then our country will have to establish a proper interspecies greeting that doesn't get reptilian lizard shot in the face. It's not my problem.
It is your problem because you pulled the trigger, Mateo. Take some goddamn responsibility.
But just like we're talking about, it's going to be alienation. Even in that movie, they depict humans fighting for the rights of the aliens. That's going to happen if anything like that happens.
Yes. Humans fight for the rights of reptilians. Do it.
Thank you for listening to the Whatcast. You can find us on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, iTunes, and YouTube. Enjoy the podcast. Get yourself a Whatcast t-shirt or a sticker pack. Who was that dude on that one episode? Try the links in Homie's page. All this and more can be found at www.thewhatcasters.com. Thanks again for listening and have a great week.